Let's talk about the colors that you're going to use. We want to avoid a deck that looks like a unicorn exploded, and instead deliberately use complementary and contrasting colors to help support the story and minimize distraction. Ideally, your organization has a color palette like we saw with SMU. So if we go back out to our website, we find ourselves back here at the SMU brand page. So we've got all of our standards on here for fonts, images, logos, and we have a color palette. So if we scroll down here on the website, we find our color palette. Now you can use a print screen, you can use a snippet tool. There's any variety of ways that you can take a snapshot from this and get it into the main deck. Let's take a look at what happens when we get it there. Once we have our color palette imported into the deck, we have an ability to go grab those colors and use it for our presentation. We do that with the eyedropper tool. Some of you may have seen this before, some of you haven't. If you haven't, I just saved you a whole bunch of time. So let us go create our own color palette. We're going to create a shape. Got our basic square. It really doesn't matter what the shape is. We just want to be able to capture that color. So the first thing we're going to do is to set our primary colors. We go up to Shape Fill, Eyedropper. Click Eyedropper. You can see as you move it around over any color, PowerPoint captures that color for you. We want to make it SMU red. Click. Okay, we now have our SMU red. Let's make another shape for SMU blue. We used our copy function, made another shape. We're going to eyedrop again. Click. Blue. We now have SMU blue. The really cool thing is if I decide to start typing in some font, this is my text, I can now make this font, look at this, recent colors, SMU blue, SMU red. So it's now in my palette that I can come back to over and over again. Every time I make a shape, every time I use font and I want to color it a specific way. You now match. I won't go through this with the secondary and tertiary colors because you get the idea. But essentially when you start your deck, you want to build out a color palette so you can have it embedded already in PowerPoint. What if you don't have a color palette? Use the logo. Remember we talked about getting the current logo, but you can create your own color palette. You can do that with the same technique. So we will go create a new shape. We use our eyedropper just as we did before. I can go grab my SMU blue. Look at that, dead on the money. If your presentation is non-company specific, you can build your own color palette and stick with it throughout the deck. Shifting the shade within a particular color is a useful way to show subtle variations within the same category. For example, you may be showing different performance level, good, better, best, and you want to appear green, but you don't want one to be lime green, another forest green, and another pastel green. Let's see what that might look like. So here we are in our color palette, and you can see that we have 3 different shades of green. We've got that kind of dark foresty green, we've got a limeish green, we've got more of a pastel colored green. Those don't really match too well. If we are creating our own color palette that we want to use and then have shade variations within the deck, grab one. Well, let's say we want to use forest green as our starting point. We'll bring that down here. We're going to create a new shape to be sort of my next darker shade. So what I'll do is I'll go up to Shape Fill, More Fill Colors, and you can see what I have here is a vertical bar on the right that allows me to stay in that same family, but I can move up or down to get the different shade. So let's pick this for a nice medium. It's enough of a contrast where we can see it. And we'll make one more for a light. Here we go. Let's get in around this territory for a light green. So now I have 3 different shades of green. I could do 4, 5, 6, whatever I wanted to do. I can have those variations, but they all stay within the same family. It gives me a much higher level of familiarity when I'm moving throughout the deck, and it just looks more professional. Let's talk about contrast. Anytime we are displaying text or data, anything the audience needs to read, there needs to be sufficient contrast between the text and its background. For example, with a light blue box, you want dark text, And with a dark blue box, you want light text. The most common place you'll run into this issue is in icons or tables. Let's go through an example. So you can see right now that on the left, I have everything in black text. In the middle, I have everything in white text. On the left, I'm losing the dark text here in this first box. That black on forest green does not really stand out, particularly if I'm ending up viewing this from the back of a room on a smaller projector. It just doesn't pop. With the second column, the white text is completely washed out with the lightest shade of green and significantly washed out with the next lightest shade. So what I can do is I can go through, I can have light text on my dark backgrounds and dark text on my light backgrounds. This is something that's often overlooked, but it is a fundamentally important piece and it shows great attention to detail. A couple of pro tips. Number one is not all projectors are created equal. If you are presenting live, try to at least test the deck out on the actual screen because differences in projector quality, the throw of the image, viewing angles and distances, room lighting, all of that can render a deck that looks beautiful on your screen completely unreadable to your audience. Make sure to review your deck not only in color, but also black and white or grayscale, as what may be a great contrast in color is 100% illegible if somebody prints it out in either black and white or grayscale. Let me show you. So we have the same image that we had before. It's showing up in color. For example, here on the right, you can see I've got my colors aligned between my text and my background to have sufficient contrast. What happens if somebody prints this in grayscale? They're trying to save a little bit of money on printing, or their color ink is out. What you can do is you can go up here to View, Grayscale, click it. So you can see this is how my text appears, right? So there's not that much contrast between the dark box and the dark text here. Particularly if it's a mediocre quality printer, this may not come out well. What you can do is you can highlight this object and you can turn it white. So you can see now when you print out on grayscale, it will appear in strong contrast. When you go back to color view, no difference whatsoever, but you have made it easier to see visually on the screen and you've made it easier to see on paper. Okay, there's a lot to unpack there, and I'll let all of you process a little bit, and I'll see you in the next video.